Good evening. Let's read a bit before I'm getting too tired. So it's soon 7 p.m. It's 6:20. Let's read about this nice Boeing 737. I have some other video in English I call aircrafts. I will make video later. I already did in English. I talk about the different kind of airliners, but I'm a bit tired, so it's much more easy to do it in my own language. Not many are watching my videos, even in Danish or English. Less 20 views. So not many watching my videos.
Boeing 737. For variants of this aircraft, see Boeing 737 Classic, Boeing 737 Next Generation, and Boeing 737 MAX. The Boeing 737 is a narrow-body aircraft produced by Boeing at its Renton factory in Washington. Developed to supplement the Boeing 727 on short and thin routes, the twinjet retained the 707 fuselage width and 6 abreast seating, but with 2 underwing turbofans instead of 4. Envisioned in 1964, the initial 737-100 made its first flight in April 1967 and entered service in February 1968 with Lufthansa. The lengthened 737-200 entered service in April 1968 and evolved through 4 generations, offering several variants for 85 to 215 passengers. The 737-100/200 original variants were powered by Pratt & Whitney JT8D low-bypass turbofan engines and offered seating for 85 to 130 passengers. Launched in 1980 and introduced in 1984, the 737 Classic-300/400/500 variants were upgraded with more fuel-efficient CFM56-3 high-bypass turbofans and offered 110 to 168 seats. Introduced in 1997, the 737 Next Generation, Ing. -600/700/800/900 variants have updated CFM56-7 high-bypass turbofans, a larger wing and an upgraded glass cockpit, and seat 108 to 215 passengers. The latest generation, the 737 MAX-7/8/9/10 variants, powered by improved CFM LEAP 1B high-bypass turbofans and accommodating 138 to 204 people, entered service in 2017. Boeing business jet versions have been produced since the 737-ing, as well as military models. As of March 2024, 16,555 Boeing 737s have been ordered and 11,727 delivered. Initially, its main competitor was the McDonnell Douglas DC-9, followed by its MD-80/MD-90 derivatives. In 2013, the global 737 fleet had completed more than 184 million flights over 264 million block hours since its entry into service. It was the highest-selling commercial aircraft until being surpassed by the competing Airbus A320 family in October 2019, but maintains the record in total deliveries. The 737 MAX, designed to compete with the A320neo, was grounded worldwide between March 2019 and November 2020 following 2 fatal crashes. A further accident involving an uncontrolled decompression led to the grounding of most 737 MAX 9 aircraft in January 2024. Development, edit. Initial design, edit. Boeing had been studying short-haul jet aircraft designs, and saw a need for a new aircraft to supplement the 727 on short and thin routes. Preliminary design work began on the 11th of May 1964, based on research that indicated a market for a 50 to 60 passenger airliner flying routes of 50 to 1,000 miles, 100 to 1,600 kilometers. The initial concept featured pod engines on the aft fuselage, a T-tail as with the 727, and 5 abreast seating. Engineer Joe Sutter relocated the engines to the wings, which lightened the structure and simplified the accommodation of 6 abreast seating in the fuselage. The engine nacelles were mounted directly to the underside of the wings, without pylons, allowing the landing gear to be shortened, thus lowering the fuselage to improve baggage and passenger access. Relocating the engines from the aft fuselage also allowed the horizontal stabilizer to be attached to the aft fuselage instead of as a T-tail. Many designs for the engine attachment strut were tested in the wind tunnel, and the optimal shape for high speed was found to be one which was relatively thick, filling the narrow channels formed between the wing and the top of the nacelle, particularly on the outboard side. At the time, Boeing was far behind its competitors. The SE-210 Caravelle had been in service since 1955, and the BAC 111, BAC 111, Douglas DC-9, and Fokker F-28 were already into flight certification. To expedite development, Boeing used 60% of the structure and systems of the existing 727, particularly the fuselage, which differs in length only. This 148-inch, 3.76 m, wide fuselage cross-section permitted 6 abreast seating compared to the rival's 5 abreast. The 727's fuselage was derived from the 707. The proposed wing airfoil sections were based on those of the 707 and 727, but somewhat thicker. Altering these sections near the nacelles achieved a substantial drag reduction at high Mach numbers. The engine chosen was the Pratt & Whitney J88D1 low bypass ratio turbofan engine, delivering 14,500 pounds force, 64 kN, of thrust. The concept design was presented in October 1964 at the Air Transport Association Maintenance and Engineering Conference by Chief Project Engineer Jack Steiner, where its elaborate high-lift devices raised concerns about maintenance costs and dispatch reliability. Major design developments, edit. The original 737 continued to be developed into 13 passenger, cargo, corporate and military variants. These were later divided into what has become known as the 4 generations of the Boeing 737 family. 1. The first generation original series, the 737-100 and -200, also the military T-43 and CT-43, launched February 1965. 2. The second generation classic series, 737-300, -400 and -500, launched in 1979. 3. The third generation next generation series, 737-600, -700, -800 and -900, also the military C-40 and P-8, launched late 1993. 4. The fourth generation 737 MAX series, 737-7, -8, -9 and -10, launched August 2011. Launch, edit. The launch decision for the $150 million, $1.11 billion in 2023, development was made by the board on the 1st of February, 1965. The sales pitch was big jet comfort on short-haul routes. Lufthansa became the launch customer on the 19th of February, 1965, with an order for 21 aircraft, worth $67 million, $494 million in 2023, after the airline had been assured by Boeing that the 737 project would not be cancelled. Consultation with Lufthansa over the previous winter had resulted in the seating capacity being increased to 100. On the 5th of April, 1965, Boeing announced an order by United Airlines for 47 737s. United wanted a slightly larger capacity than the 737-100, so the fuselage was stretched 36 inches, 91 centimeters, ahead of, and 40 inches, 102 centimeters, behind the wing. The longer version was designated the 737-200, with the original short-body aircraft becoming the 737-100. Detailed design work continued on both variants simultaneously. Introduction, edit. The first -100 was rolled out on the 17th of January, 1967, and took its maiden flight on the 9th of April, 1967, piloted by Brian Wiggle and Lew Wallace. After several test flights, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, issued Type Certificate to 16 recertifying the 737-100 for commercial flight on the 15th of December, 1967. It was the first aircraft to have, as part of its initial certification, approval for Category 2 approaches, which refers to a precision instrument approach and landing with a decision height between 98 and 197 feet, 30 and 60 m. Lufthansa received its first aircraft on the 28th of December, 1967, and on the 10th of February, 1968, became the first non-American airline to launch a new Boeing aircraft. Lufthansa was the only significant customer to purchase the 737-100 and only 30 aircraft were produced. The -200 was rolled out on the 29th of June, 1967, and had its maiden flight on the 8th of August, 1967. It was then certified by the FAA on the 21st of December, 1967. The inaugural flight for United Airlines took place on the 28th of April, 1968, from Chicago to Grand Rapids, Michigan. The lengthened -200 was widely preferred over the -100 by airlines. The improved version, the 737-200 Advanced, was introduced into service by All Nippon Airways on the 20th of May, 1971. The 737 original model with its variants, known later as the Boeing 737 Original, initially competed with SE-210 Caravelle and BAC 111 due to their earlier entry into service and later primarily with the McDonnell Douglas DC-9, then its MD-80 derivatives as the three European short-haul single-aisles slowly withdrew from the competition. Sales were low in the early 1970s and, after a peak of 114 deliveries in 1969, only 22 737s were shipped in 1972 with 19 in backlog. The U.S. Air Force saved the program by ordering T-43s, which were modified Boeing 737-200s. African airline orders kept the production running until the 1978 U.S. Airline Deregulation Act, which improved demand for 6 abreast narrow-body aircraft. Demand further increased after being re-engined with the CFM56. The 737 went on to become the highest-selling commercial aircraft until surpassed by the competing Airbus A320 family in October 2019, but maintains the record in total deliveries. The fuselage is manufactured in Wichita, Kansas, by Boeing spin-off company Spirit AeroSystems, before being moved by rail to Renton. The Renton factory has 3 assembly lines for the 737 MAX, a 4th is planned to open at the Everett factory in 2024. Generations and variants, edit. 737 original, first generation, edit. The Boeing 737 original is the name given to the -100/200 and -200 advanced series of the Boeing 737 family. 737-100, edit. The initial model was the 737-100, the smallest variant of the 737 aircraft family, which was launched in February 1965 and entered service with Lufthansa in February 1968. In 1968, its unit cost was $3.7 m, 1968, $32.4 million today. A total of 37 737-100s were ordered, 22 by Lufthansa, 5 by Malaysia Singapore Airlines, MSA, and 2 by Avianca, with the final commercial aircraft delivered to MSA on the 31st of October, 1969. The first aircraft used by Boeing as prototype under registration N73700 was later ordered by and delivered to NASA on the 26th of July, 1973, which then operated it under registration N515NA and retired after 30 years on the 27th of September, 2003. This was the last operated 737-100 and is the only remaining worldwide, which is on static display in the Museum of Flight in Seattle. The original engine nacelles incorporated thrust reversers taken from the 727 outboard nacelles. They proved to be relatively ineffective and tended to lift the aircraft up off the runway when deployed. This reduced the downforce on the main wheels, thereby reducing the effectiveness of the wheel brakes. In 1968, an improvement to the thrust reversal system was introduced. A 48-inch tailpipe extension was added and new target-style thrust reversers were incorporated. The thrust reverser doors were set 35 degrees away from the vertical to allow the exhaust to be deflected inboard and over the wings and outboard and under the wings. The improvement became standard on all aircraft after March 1969, and a retrofit was provided for active aircraft. Longer nacelle forward/wing fairings were introduced, and the airflow over the flaps and slats was improved. The production line also introduced an improvement to the flap system, allowing increased use during takeoff and landing. All these changes gave the aircraft a boost to payload and range, and improved short field performance. 737-200, edit. The 737-200 was a 737-100 with an extended fuselage, launched by an order from United Airlines in 1965 and entered service with the launch customer in April 1968. Its unit cost was $4.0 m, 1968, $35 million today. The -200s unit cost was $5.2 m, 1972, $37.9 million today. The 737-200 Advanced is an improved version of the -200, introduced into service by All Nippon Airways on the 20th of May, 1971. After aircraft #135, the 737-200 Advanced has improved aerodynamics, automatic wheel brakes, more powerful engines, more fuel capacity, and hence a 15% increase in payload and range over the original -200S and respectively -100S. The 737-200 Advanced became the production standard in June 1971. Boeing also provided the 737-200C Combi, which allowed for conversion between passenger and cargo use, and the 737-200QC Quick Change, which facilitated a rapid conversion between roles. The 1,095th and last delivery of a -200 series aircraft was in August 1988 to Xiamen Airlines. 19 737-200S, designated T-43, were used to train aircraft navigators for the U.S. Air Force. Some were modified into CT-43S, which are used to transport passengers, and one was modified as the NT-43, a radar test bed. The first was delivered on the 31st of July 1973, and the last on the 19th of July 1974. The Indonesian Air Force ordered 3 modified 737-200S, designated Boeing 737-2X9 Surveyor. They were used as maritime reconnaissance, MPA, forward/transport aircraft, fitted with SLAM-R, side-looking multi-mission airborne radar. The aircraft were delivered between May 1982 and October 1983. After 40 years, in March 2008, the final 737-200 aircraft in the U.S. flying scheduled passenger service were phased out, with the last flights of Aloha Airlines. As of 2018, the variant still saw regular service through North American charter operators such as Sierra Pacific Airlines. With the improved short-field capabilities of the 737-200, Boeing offered the option of the gravel kit modification features preventing foreign object damage, which enables this aircraft to operate on remote, unimproved or unpaved runways, such as gravel runways, that other similarly sized jetliners cannot. Until retiring its -200 fleet in 2007, Alaska Airlines used this option for some of its Combi aircraft rural operations to serve many unimproved runways in Alaska. Gravel-kitted 737-200 Combis are still used by Canadian North, which is due to retire their last one in early 2023, Air Inuit, Nolina Aviation and Chrono Aviation in northern Canada, where gravel runways are common. As of September 2023, a relatively high number of 737-200s remain in service compared to other early jet airliners, with 50 examples actively flying for 30 carriers. During the 737 MAX groundings, older 737s, including the 200 and Classic series, were in demand for leasing. 737 Classic, second generation, edit. Main article, Boeing 737 Classic. The Boeing 737 Classic is the name given to the 737-300/400/500 series after the introduction of the -600/700/800/900 series of the Boeing 737 family. Produced from 1984 to 2000, a total of 1,988 Classic series were delivered. Close to the next major upgrade of single-aisle aircraft at Airbus and Boeing, the price of jet fuel reached a peak in 2008, when airlines devoted 40% of the retail price of an air ticket to pay for fuel, versus 15% in 2000. Consequently, in that year carriers retired Boeing 737 classic aircraft to reduce fuel consumption. Replacements consisted of more efficient 737 next generation or a 320 family aircraft. On the 4th of June, 2008, United Airlines announced it would retire all 94 of its classic 737 aircraft, 64 737 to 300 and 30 737 to 500 aircraft, replacing them with a 320 family jets taken from its TED subsidiary, which has been shut down. This intensified the competition between the two giant aircraft manufacturers, which has since become a duopoly competition. An optional upgrade with winglets became available for the Classic Ending series. The 737-300 can be retrofitted with aviation partners Boeing winglets. The 737-300 retrofitted with winglets is designated the -300 SP, Special Performance. 2 WestJet was to launch the 737-600 with winglets, but dropped them in 2006. 737-300, edit. Development began in 1979 for the 737's first major revision, which was originally introduced as the new generation of the 737. Boeing wanted to increase capacity and range, incorporating improvements to upgrade the aircraft to modern specifications, while also retaining commonality with previous 737 variants. In 1980, preliminary aircraft specifications of the variant, dubbed 737-300, were released at the Farnborough Air Show. This first major upgrade series was later renamed 737 Classic. It competed primarily with the MD-80, its later derivative the MD-90, and the newcomer Airbus A320 family. Boeing engineer Mark Gregor led a design team, which cooperated with CFM International to select, modify and deploy a new engine and nacelle that would make the 737-300 into a viable aircraft. They chose the CFM 56-3B1 high bypass turbofan engine to power the aircraft, which yielded significant gains in fuel economy and a reduction in noise, but also posed an engineering challenge, given the low ground clearance of the 737 and the larger diameter of the engine over the original Pratt & Whitney engines. Gregor's team and CFM solved the problem by reducing the size of the fan, which made the engine slightly less efficient than it had been forecast to be, placing the engine ahead of the wing, and by moving engine accessories to the sides of the engine pod, giving the engine a distinctive non-circular hamster pouch air intake. Earlier customers for the CFM56 included the U.S. Air Force with its program to re-engine KC-135 tankers. The passenger capacity of the aircraft was increased to 149 by extending the fuselage around the wing by 9 feet 5 inches, 2.87 m. The wing incorporated several changes for improved aerodynamics. The wingtip was extended 9 inches, 23 centimeters, and the wingspan by 1 foot 9 inches, 53 centimeters. The leading edge slats and trailing edge flaps were adjusted. The tail fin was redesigned. The flight deck was improved with the optional EFIS, electronic flight instrumentation system, and the passenger cabin incorporated improvements similar to those developed on the Boeing 757. The prototype -300, the 1,001 ST-737 built, first flew on the 24th of February 1984, with pilot Jim McRoberts. It and 2 production aircraft flew a 9-month-long certification program. The 737-300 retrofitted with aviation partners winglets was designated the -300 SP, Special performance. The 737-300 was replaced by the 737-700 of the next generation series. 737-400, edit. The 737-400 was launched in 1985 to fill the gap between the 737